All right. May peace and power elevation be to all of you. What's up? This your girl Tiffany coming through right here live in effect. And so if you are on my YouTube channel, go ahead and share and subscribe to that channel. If you are on Facebook, go ahead and share this video on Facebook. So right here we do what I do daily is Black History to commemorate and honor those who have put out the work and done the legacy, left their legacy behind for us. So today, I want to get started on W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, many people doesn't know about who W.E.B. Du Bois is. Maybe you heard his name, maybe you haven't. Before I get started, I want to show an image of who he is. So this is W.E.B. Du Bois right here. Okay. So let's go ahead and get into his biography, if we will. Give me a minute. All right. So right here, I'm on his biography. All right, so now this information can be found on plato.stanford.edu, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Okay, so here it is. So it says W.E.B. Du Bois, first published on Wednesday on September 13, 2017. William Edward Bernhardt Du Bois believed that his life acquired its only deep significance through its participation in what he called the Negro problem, or later the race problem. Whether that is true or not, it is difficult to think of anyone at any time who examined the race problem in its many aspects more profoundly, extensively, and subtly than W.E.B. Du Bois. So it says, Du Bois was an activist and a journalist, a historian and a sociologist, a novelist, a critic, and a philosopher, but it is the race problem that unified his work in these many domains. Okay. Then it goes on to say that Du Bois contribute to our specifically philosophical understanding of race and the race problem, because he treats these themes as objects of philosophical consideration. Indeed, it is largely through an engagement with Du Bois' work that many contemporary philosophers have come to appreciate race and race relation concern as fruitful topics of philosophical reflection. Through his work in social philosophy, of political philosophy, and philosophy of art, Du Bois, for all intents and purpose, invented the field of philosophy and race, thereby unsettling and revising our views of the proper scope and aims of philosophical inquiry. All right, so before we go there, let's talk about something. Let's talk about how W.E.B. Du Bois do not receive a lot of credit in the Black history realm. Now, you may hear the fact that they talk about the talented 10, right? Or the soul of the Negroes. First of all, don't come over here. This ain't. Why are you coming over here asking this question? Why are you coming over here asking me, do Black lives matter? What's your reason for asking me that? While I'm in the middle of the discourse, why the fuck would you come over here and ask me that? Maybe you should figure that out yourself. Maybe you should figure that out. You tell me, do Black lives matter? So you're going to come in the middle of while I'm doing my little discourse and sit up here and ask me, do Black lives matter? Maybe you should ask yourself that. Why you asking me? Like, don't try to challenge me on that. Don't play with me. Anyways, that's what I was saying. So W.E.B. Du Bois have not received a lot of credit for the work that he has done regarding to African Americans and Black history and all that good stuff. So when we hear about him, we hear about the Talented 10 and the soul of Black folk, but we just don't hear about him overall in general. Many people thought that he was, during his prime, was considered as, okay. So anyways, yes, at that time, he was considered as a house Negro because he came from a middle-class family. So he had no understanding about race relation or racism until he started studying his field of sociology and began to travel in the South. So with that being the case, we're going to go back and look into this. All right. So let's look at his life. All right, it says Du Bois' life and major publication. All right, born William Edward Barnhart Du Bois, Great Barrington, Massachusetts, on February the 23rd. He graduated from Great Barrington High School. He entered to Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee with sophomore standing. That's 1885. And he received a BA from Fisk, delivering communism oration on Otto von Bismarck. Entered Harvard College as a junior. Take philosophy courses with William James, George Santania, and F.G. Peabody. All right, he graduated from Harvard College with a BA cum laude in philosophy, delivers a communism oration on Jefferson Davis. Right, and then he received an award in 1892 from the Slater Fund to study at Jesuit Wilhelm University in Berlin, where he works closely with Gustav von Schmoller, leader of the younger German historical school. So that's a list of his accomplishment and his achievement. Okay. Then it goes down further, say that he published the Philadelphia Negro. He published the book The Souls of Black Folks in 1903. 1909, John Brown, a biography. That's what he published. Okay, then he was appointed the director of research publication for the NAACP, begins to edit the crisis and official publication of the NAACP. Right, and he published the Negro, which is 1915. He organized the first Pan-African conference in Paris. Something is off about that number, but okay. He published Dark Water, Voices from Within the Veil, attended the second Pan-African conference in London. Okay. All right, so all right, so then it goes on to talk about social philosophy, the Negro problem, and race. So over the course of his career, Du Bois' social philosophy comprised contribution to social ontology, on social theory, the philosophy of the human and social sciences, and the diagnosis of social problem. His analysis of the nature of a social problem, and specifically his diagnosis of the Negro problem. His social constructions, accounts of race and race differences, his ongoing reflection of the method, purpose, and sometimes moral significance of social inquiry, and his elaboration of the claim that the concept of race operating as a mechanism of power, structures, relation of social dominance all played a critical role in what he ultimately came to call his evolving program for Negro freedom. That's 1944, page 31. The present session bears on Du Bois' analysis of the Negro problem and his contribution to the philosophy of race. Okay, and then goes down and say section 3 below, focus on his contribution to philosophy and the social science. Now, right here it says, what is the Negro problem? Du Bois considered the Negro problem both objectively and subjectively, both from the standpoint of science and from the standpoint of lived experience. Okay, so this is where it breaks down the concept of how he identified the Negro problems. So the Negro problem objectively considered in the study of the Negro problem in 1898, one of his earliest publications, Du Bois responded to then contemporary discussion of America's Negro problem by conceptualizing the problem as an object of social scientific inquiry. Sociology studies social phenomenon, and the social phenomenon that interest Du Bois are the cluster of social problems affecting American Negroes. The Negro is not the problem in his view, although problems affect the Negro. In the perspective of sociology, the Negro problem just is a cluster of social problems. But what is a social problem? All right, so Du Bois answered this question by defining a social problem as the failure of an organized social group to realize its group idea through the inability to adapt a certain desired line of action given condition of life. One example is the failure to enact the ideal of a luxurious home life due to prevailing marriage custom. Another is the failure to enact the ideal of economic and social development due to crime and lawlessness. Okay, so I know that's a lot of information, right? Because you have to understand, W.E.B. Du Bois operated from a sociological standpoint, right? Because he was a sociologist. And basically what he was saying is the social problem of today during his time period and still current to this day is the lack of being able to solve the racial disparities or the dichotomy that this society has created between African Americans and other groups. And the fact that the Negro or Black people at that time are not gaining the rights or getting the justice that is deserved to them, or not getting the fair treatment and opportunity like others are doing. So that's what W.E.B. Du Bois was talking about. So what I want to do is let's go ahead and let's go ahead and look up some more information about him. I want to show you guys some more sources rather. Okay. So this is one of the sources about W.E.B. Du Bois. It's called Evolving Conception of Pan-African Scholarship, W.E.B. Du Bois, Carl G. Wilson, and the Encyclopedia Africana from 1909 to 1963. That's W.E.B. Du Bois right here. All right. Okay, let's see what he had to say. All right, in this article, it's the Journal of African American History. It says, in what was to be his last major speech before passing, W.E.B. Du Bois addressed a conference hosted by the secretary of the Encyclopedia Africana at the University of Ghana in Accra on December 15, 1962. As he spoke to the audience, Du Bois outlined 3 different phases of a dream that was over half a century in the making. He also attempted to locate the encyclopedia within the context of the African independence movement and the vision of Pan-Africanism that he shared with Ghana's president, Kwame Nkrumah. Although Du Bois intended his work to be a cautionary note to all those willing to confront the challenges of the enormous project, in hindsight, he also spoke to a long and complicated history surrounding the realization of an encyclopedia of Africa and the African diaspora. Okay, the story of The Encyclopedia Africana and the Encyclopedia of the Negro constitutes a history that spans much of 20th century. It revolves around two titans of the African American intellectual tradition, while also drawing upon the efforts of several organizations and a number of prominent scholars, both black and white. This essay provides a new interpretation of the history surrounding the efforts of both W.E.B. Du Bois and Carter G. Woodson to produce encyclopedia on the experiences of people of African descent. Now, it focuses on the portion of the story that either had been misconstrued or, in some cases, overlooked within the existing scholarship by highlighting the manner in which the encyclopedia grew and changed. For Du Bois, Woodson, this essay explored how both scholars initiated work on separate projects at different times, yet were unable to combine their effort. Okay, so as you can see, that source of information kind of goes into the concept about how W.E.B. Du Bois have traveled to Ghana, where he eventually lived in Ghana, and that's where he died. He was giving his speech regarding to like the Pan-African and the Encyclopedia Africana, and also it was going in to talk about how he and Carter G. Woodson, they both was on the same page. Okay, Carter G. Woodson was more focused on history of African American, right? So he's considered as the father of Black history because he was the one that made it more relevant to the people. Where W.E.B. Du Bois focused on the race relation of African Americans and the social and psychological issues, right? But they both had a common ground. They focused on Black people in general. However, there was some irreconcilable differences going on, so to where they both could not see eye to eye with each other for whatever reason. Let's see. Where am I at? Okay, so it says the story of Encyclopedia Africana and the Encyclopedia of the Negro constitute a history that spans much of the 20th century. Its development revolves around two titans of the African American intellectual tradition, while also drawing upon the efforts of several organizations and a number of prominent scholars, both black and white. This essay provides a new interpretation of the history surrounding the efforts of both W.E.B. Du Bois and Carter G. Woodson to produce encyclopedias on the experiences of people of African descent. It focused on the portion of the story that either have been misconstrued or, in some cases, overlooked within the existing scholarship by highlighting the manner in which the encyclopedia grew and changed. For Du Bois and Woodson, this essay explored both how scholars initiate work on separate projects at different times, yet were unable to combine their effort. All right, so let's go ahead and skip on down. So it goes on to say on April the 5th, 1909, while working in the Department of Sociology at Atlanta University, which is now Clark Atlanta University, Du Bois communicated with Liberian scholar Edward Wilmot Blyden, one of the leading proponents of Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism. Du Bois was soliciting Blyden's assistance with creating an Encyclopedia Africana covering the chief points on the history and condition of the Negro race. In referring to the project, Du Bois used two descriptions: in Africana, in an Encyclopedia Africana, and a Negro encyclopedia. In his correspondence, Du Bois made explicit that he wanted the project to be led by an editorial board comprised of the leading scholars of the race, along with an advisory board consisting of the eminent white scholars who shall give advice and guidance. But the real work, Du Bois stressed, I want done by Negroes. Although not the last, this private correspondence contained Du Bois' first mention of his idea for an Encyclopedia Africana. Even though the thrust of the project changed over the years, Du Bois should be credited with envisioning an intellectual project that will bring together the history and culture of people of African descent in Africa and throughout the African diaspora in the first decade of the 20th century. Now, check this out. It says, this represents an embrace of Pan-Africanism at the broadest scholarly level. At the same time, Du Bois desired for a project led by. All right, I'm back, y'all. Sorry about that. Okay, it says, this represents an embrace of Pan-Africanism at the broadest scholarly level. At the same time, Du Bois' desire for a project led by African-descended people represent a nationalist approach to African and African-American history and historical scholarship. This broad Pan-African and nationalist thrust is important because in Du Bois' subsequent efforts to produce an encyclopedia, these 2 points of ideological emphasis would change considerably. All right, so there is no specific evidence that reveals Du Bois' inspiration for Encyclopedia Project. In both of his published articles, Clarence Contine speculated that there were at least 3 sources of Du Boisian concept: the Jewish Encyclopedia published in 1901, Du Bois' own Atlanta University Studies, and the Black cultural nationalism of the era. Gates argued, indeed, though he never admitted it, it is highly probable that the publication of the Jewish Encyclopedia in 1907 was the determining factor in Du Bois' thinking, leading him to attempt to mount a project equivalent in range and scope for the Black world. Contradicting himself in the contrast for the article, Gates stated in 1901, W.E.B. Du Bois conceived the idea of Encyclopedia Africana. Neither Contine or Gates provide evidence for these assertions. Indeed, each cited different publication date for the Jewish Encyclopedia. So now, what we're looking at here is that one party saying that Du Bois was in support of the Jewish Encyclopedia, right? And then another party saying that he was mainly focused on the Encyclopedia of Africana. So yeah, that's a little conflict right there in that article. But anyways, if you guys want to look up more information about this article, you can go ahead and do so. So it's called The Evolving Concept of Pan-African Scholarship of W.E.B. Du Bois, Carl G. Woodson, and the Encyclopedia Africana, 1909 to 1963, by Jonathan Fenderson. Okay. Let's see what else we can find over here. Okay, so let me show you something real fast. Okay, so let's see. It says right here, in addition to Blyden, Du Bois corresponded in 1909 with over 60 other Negro American, African, and West Indian scholars, and at least 50 white scholars for cooperation in advice. Their left column of a letterhead from the period listed the individuals who agreed to participate in the project. The list included the African American author and activist Charles Chestnut, Du Bois Niagara Fall Movement Alley, and president of Atlanta University, John Hope, Kesley Hayford, the Ghanaian Pan-Africanist, NAACP co-founder, the Reverend Archibald Gimmick, and African American activist and intellectual Kelly Miller, a minister activist, and Arthur Sutton E. Griggs, and the prominent African American educator Benjamin Brawley, among others. It says the white scholars who agreed to serve on the board of advisors included anthropologist Fran Boas, Harvard psychologist and philosopher William James, and Sir Henry Johnson, the British explorer and colonial administrator. All right. So So according to this source of information, pretty much W.E.B. Du Bois grabbed scholars from different parts of the world and even some white scholars. So for one, he interacted with African American scholars, African continental African scholars, and West Indian scholars, along with European scholars, so they all can combine together and do the research or deal with the anthropology of African Americans and Africans in the diaspora. So pretty much to compile the encyclopedia and stuff like that. John Little, always the one reason why we are being attacked because of our greatness. All right, so let's see. I got other information I want to show you. Okay. All right, so here it is. W.E.B. Du Bois, Scholars and Activists. All right, that's this is a PDF, a book, a ebook. It's called the Black Americans of Achievement Legacy Edition. Okay, this is about W.E.B. Du Bois. So there's the authors. It was written in 2005. Okay. So that's the introduction, blah, 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 blah. Let's see. Let's look at the table of content. All right. To be a leader of my people, a boy's paradise, the making of a scholar, the father of Africa. All right. So let's look up to be a leader of my people. All right, check this out. It says, W.E.B. Du Bois was eager to return home after spending the past 2 years overseas studying on a fellowship at Friedrich Wilhelm University in Berlin, Germany. He was ready to go back to the United States and put his education to work. In Berlin, where he had mixed freely with white and had been treated as their equal, the Black scholar had written in his diary that his chief aim was to make a name for myself in science and literature and to be a leader of my people. Now, at the age of 26, the time to realize his goals have arrived. Du Bois stepped onto the main deck of the SS Chester just as it began to veer into New York Harbor. He was fairly bored after 9 monotonous days at sea and decided to study the passengers who shared his steerage accommodation. Russians, Greek, Austrians, Germans, Poles, they were impressive sight. And it says it was the spring of 1894. America had recently opened its door to great waves of immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe. Of the 800 passengers on the Chester, 350 were men, women, and children from the lower classes, farmers whose faces were bronzed and wrinkled from long days spent under the Mediterranean sun, pale workers who had sweat long hours in damn factories to pay their passage to the United States, all straining for a glimpse of their new homeland. So, and it says Du Bois felt drawn to the picturesque and laughable crowd. This great stream of hopes and longing, as he later described his fellow passenger in the autobiography of W.E.B. Du Bois. In only one other place had he seen faces so deeply grooved with poverty and struggle. In the American South, there as a college student at Fisk University, Nashville, Tennessee, he had observed the daily struggle of Black sharecroppers. So that chapter goes into when Du Bois was studying overseas in Germany, and on his way back from Germany coming to the United States, he was surrounded by white people, but white people that come from various parts of Europe. Some that came from Austria, Germany, Poland, or whatnot. And Many of them come from poverty background and struggles. And then he talked about his experience when he was going to school in Nashville, Tennessee, where he's seen so many struggling Black people doing sharecropping and things of that nature. So that would really inspire him to really get more involved into doing his sociological work because of what he experienced and what he witnessed about his own people and about other cultures out there. And also, I have a book that deals with the ghetto, right? The idea of the ghetto. Well, it was written by somebody that was Jewish. However, the book goes into when W.E.B. Du Bois went to Germany and he started to see this ghetto camps and things of that nature and how the Jewish people were treated over there in that area. So it kind of just showed him that, okay, Black people are not the only ones that live in the hood or live in the inner city and deal with poverty. So he said over in Germany, they deal with poverty, especially those who are of a Jewish background. But that's another topic for later. Anyways, if you guys are interested, you can check this book out for yourself. It is called W.E.B. Du Bois, Black Americans of Achievement. Let's see. Let me go to the encyclopedia. It says Father of Africa. Oh my God, let me see something. Okay, so right here it says the Father of Africa. So this is the last few years of his life when he ended up going to Africa. Okay. It says that the Father of Africa, it was a bitter experience, and I bowed before the storm. Du Bois said of the outcast status that was conferred on him in 1952. But I did not break as the U.S. government witch hunt for communists continued in the early 1950s. He turned his attention away from articles of protest and addressed Black issues in work of fiction. In 1957, Du Bois published his third novel, The Ordeal of Mansart, which became the first volume in his Black Flame trilogy. Manuel Mansart, the main character in the book, is an intellectual who heads a Black college in Georgia in the late 1800s and comes to face with racial violence. The subsequent volumes in the trilogy, Mansart builds a school in Worlds of Color, published in 1959 and 1961, respectively, following the story of Mansart climb up to the 1960s and conclude with emergence of Africa as a world power. All told, the trilogy offers a clear indication that Du Bois was losing hope in America as a place where Blacks could live freely. So that's what made him go to Africa. So, because basically he's just lost hope. He said, you know what? Ain't too much hope here in America. So I might as well just go over there to Africa. And it goes down here. Consequently, it was Du Bois' great surprise and deep regret that he was forced to remain on the sideline in 1950 when huge advances in the civil rights struggle came to pass. The first major victory took place in 1954 when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled unanimously in the case of Brown versus Board of Education that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. Segregation is a denial of the equal protection of the law. Du Bois was elated. I have seen the impossible happen, he exclaimed. Nevertheless, Du Bois knew that Blacks still had a long way to go before they achieved racial equality. Landmark rulings such as the Brown decision were a big step forward for Black Americans, as were the mass protests and boycotts led by civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. As Du Bois noted pointedly, however, we are not free yet. So and then it goes, all right. Okay, it says, as new civil rights leaders emerged in the United States and he had increasingly less say in Black affairs, Du Bois became even more anxious to travel to Africa and other locations. He soon got his chance in 1958. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the State Department lacked the authority to demand political statements from American citizens prior to issuing them a passport. And Du Bois and his wife received their travel documents that July and left the country the following month. It was his 15th trip overseas and it lasted until the following July. All right, and it says shortly after Du Bois returned to the United States in the summer of 1959, the government once again restricted his freedom to travel. The State Department confiscated his passport because of his visit to a dangerous country, Red China, and did not return it until the following year. By then, the 91-year-old Du Bois was invigorated by his encounters in non-capitalist society. They inspired him with visions of what might be possible in a developing land where the evils of democracy had not yet taken hold, Africa. Nkrumah was inaugurated as the first president of Ghana in July of 1960, and Du Bois was quick to attend the festivities. A short time later, Nkrumah asked Du Bois to consider moving, and that's W.E.B. Du Bois, meet with one the Chinese leader. Okay, it said so down here it said that Nkrumah asked Du Bois to consider moving to Ghana and starting a Encyclopedia Africana study as such as you would conduct. The African leader said will open the school, will open the eyes of African, will lay bare all the potentialities of this vast continent, will uncover its past and will relate to the past to the present. All right, it said the study will be a major factor in uniting us culturally, economically, and psychologically. All right. So Du Bois was enthralled by the proposition it would be the summation of the dreams that had sustained him through many years of disappointment. He returned to the United States and began to lay groundwork for the encyclopedia by contacting the leaders, research bodies, and scholars in America and abroad. Okay. And then go down and say before Du Bois left the United States for good, he made one last gesture on October the 1st of 1961. He joined the American Communist Party. Capitalism cannot be reformed itself. It is doomed to self-destruction, to universal selfishness, and can bring good social good to all, he said in explaining his decision to become a party member. Communism, the effort to give all men what they need and to ask of each the best they can contribute. This is the only way human life. For information on communism in America, enter American Communist Party into any search engine and browse the site list. All right. Okay, then goes down and says Du Bois died later that evening on August 27th of 1963. He was 95 years old. Ghana honored him in death as she had honored him in life. Surely his widow wrote, bury him as they would have buried a head of state. The United States was the only nation with a consulate in Ghana that did not send a representative to his funeral. All right, so that's the story of W.E.B. Du Bois' life. All right, and this is his funeral. See, It says where he was revered and given a funeral fit for a head of state. Though he died before the height of the civil rights eras, his writing and teachings were part of the movement's foundation. He is still recognized today for contribution to race relation and Black culture. Now that's him. I mean, well, that's his funeral services. Okay. All right, so right here is the book. If you want to look up more information, you can do so on your own term. All right, so, oops, I don't know what that hell. I don't know what that is. All right, so that's all the information about W.E.B. Du Bois and Black history. And I thank you guys for tuning in and watching. So if you want to, if you like this channel and you want to support it, go ahead and hit the notification bell. If you want to go ahead and share my video on Facebook, you're more than welcome to do so. Now, before I close out, I want to address something. All right. So earlier, somebody asked a question about, do Black Lives Matter? If Black lives did not matter to me, why would I be doing Black history? Obviously, Black lives does matter, because otherwise I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Think about it. And I'm doing this on my own term. I'm doing this out of my own will. So obviously, Black lives does matter to me. Now, there are some people in our race that are very ignorant, and that's very inconsiderate, and that does not care about the lives of other people. Okay? So those people that you can't take consideration for, because they don't have consideration for others. But overall, in general, when it comes to injustice that's taking place in this country, yes, our lives matter. When it comes to the innocent being attacked and being abused, yes, our lives matter. So if that answers your question, I hope it does. All right. But when you try to ask me a little question like that, you're on some other type of shit. And I'm starting to think that you're trying to prove a point. You're trying to say something or trying to insinuate something that's not there. But anyways, I'm done. Thank you guys for tuning in. This your girl, Tiffany. I'm finna log out. So please take it easy and be safe out here. Until next time, deuces. All right. Thank you.